Hey, you guys. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. So, you guys, recently, Tyler Baltierra from Teen Mom, he appeared on a YouTube channel, Tracy Doula. She has a small channel, but I saw a couple outlets covering this interview, and it's a really good interview. So, I wanted to cover it. I have the link to the full interview in the description box below. We're not going to go over the full interview. Obviously, we're just going to touch on a few things, but I did watch the full interview and it was actually really, I mean, not actually, it was really good. It was an interesting interview. So I do encourage everybody to go check it out. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to get into it, you guys, because I do have to leave in like an hour. And y'all know sometimes I'm long winded. So I got to get into it. So if you guys keep up with Caitlin and Tyler, you guys know that back in the early days of Teen Mom, Kate and Ty were literally the faces of open adoption. They were the first couple on the show to go through the process of adoption. And after they placed their daughter Carly, they spoke at schools, they appeared at events, they were even held up by adoption agencies as an example of how selfless the choice could be. But now, here we are 16 years later. Tyler has opened up about how deeply his views have changed and why he believes adoption needs to look completely different these days. We're going to play a few clips, not the whole thing for sure.
How do you even begin to heal yourself with that kind of guilt? You know, we look back at it.
Let me slow, y'all. I have to listen to everything that I watch in fast speed because I'm just a busybody person that don't have time to listen to it in slow speed. I did not dye my hair, but I have had people asking that. I think it's just the camera, I guess.
Now as adults, and we're like, it was actually just tears of, we were just crying for help. Because I don't care how much planning you have. I don't care how many times you've hung out with the adoptive family. You can be prepared as much as you want, but the feeling to fight that organic, natural parental instinct is fighting against nature.
Do you feel, well, grace, like you got to give yourself some grace and all of that. You don't know what you didn't know.
Right.
And do you feel like you were more trapped because of the show?
It was always a but. Like we would say, it was really hard, but she had such a great life. And it was devastating and sad, but, you know, and it's like we were trying to make sense of the pain. It took years of therapy for us to even get to the point where our therapist was like, stop saying but. And that's it. It's almost like your brain's trying to like heal and make sense of this pain. So what do? You advocate and talk about how great it is and this is beautiful. And I want to get to a point where adoption is not necessary.
Well,
okay, so I have to comment on that really quickly because a lot of people give me heck because I have defended Kate and Ty at times with certain things. But as someone that's studying body language and how much like our limbic brain reacts to things from like the way we are still set to react to things from it, there has to be some truth to this, and it makes so much sense that as you know, most parents, especially mothers, carry a baby, they have to have that longing for, you know, to take care of the baby even if they place the baby up for adoption. I feel like most, I'm not saying all for sure. I would say like I couldn't imagine having a child and not having that longing. So I do feel like the majority is like, even if you place your child for adoption, you still have that longing, I feel like. So I do feel like there's got to be some truth in that, you know. But let's continue. So as you guys can see here, Tyler appeared on, this is called Tracy Doula. That's her YouTube channel. Tracy herself was a teen mom and is also adopted. So she couldn't wait to talk to Tyler and Kate about their story, but Kate was busy. So she sat down with Tyler. On this episode, Tyler reflects on what life was really like when Caitlin became pregnant as a teenager. At just 16 years old, they were overwhelmed, surrounded by unstable family environments. And instead of being offered support, they were told adoption was the only responsible choice. And we're going to skip to right here, I think.
I think back then, first off, you know, me and Kate met when we were 14. By this point, we were together for 3 years, and we both come from just pretty, just really not good family household issues. And I think looking back now as an adult, I definitely feel like we were just going through the motions and thinking that our home life was normal and like all the kids were dealing with the same thing. And, you know, I think back then it was more or less like we had the situation that happened. And I remember finding out that she was pregnant when we were 16 and just the first thing I asked her was like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I told her, I said, listen, whatever you want to do, my duty is just to be there and support you, and let's just do that. Adoption got brought up pretty early on during her pregnancy, and that was because my sister a year prior was going to place her daughter for adoption, and that's kind of how I got introduced even to the idea of it. And my sister ended up changing her.
Did you guys know that? Because I feel like I don't remember that, but it could be quite possible that I knew that and it just like left my brain. But who did not know that Tyler's sister contemplated adoption, went through the process, but then had her baby and decided to keep her baby in the hospital?
Mind in the hospital that day that she was born. So, and me and Kate actually hung out with the prospective adoptive parents the whole time, and they had the car seat together. They were all excited. Their family was all excited. And so I think for me and Kate, from our perspective at that age, looking at adoption, it was like, wow, these people are great. And we were actually really sad when we had to watch them be heartbroken leaving the hospital with the empty car seat. So that was the first thing that we so me and Kate both knew about adoption when she was pregnant. We just didn't know how to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think back then we were just literally in desperation mode, because we knew with Kate's her home life and her abuse and the alcoholic.
So yes, in this clip, he says he felt like it was his job to support whatever decision Kate wanted, that he had like a 40%, like the lady was like, it kind of should be 50-50, since you're the father. He said, I felt like it was more like 40-50. Like I feel like I needed to support whatever she wanted. That's what he says in this clip.
Drug addict environment.
This video.
We just knew that we just didn't want to kind of have this innocent baby be, raised and all that kind of stuff. So I think pretty early on, we kind of were like, okay, well, let's look into this option a little more in depth. And that's when we contacted, Bethany Christian Services, which is an adoption agency, pretty popular in Michigan. So, and that's where we live. So yeah, I think our feelings and mindset back then were just, honestly, we're just pure desperation and just like concerned fear. I mean, literally just drowning in fear, because I think at that point we both knew that, our parents were just not capable of helping us the way that we needed. And I remember, doing the TV show and stuff, and then talking to like Macy and everyone who, we're the only ones who placed and relinquished. So I was asking all of them, and they all said, oh, my mom and my dad had such great support. And so I was like, that seemed like to be the missing piece, was that they all had such great family support systems. And then me and Kate were like, well, we don't, we can't rely on these adults, even though they're telling us, don't do this and please keep the baby. But it's like, you're telling me this while you're on parole and addicted to drugs. It's not really, it's not, yeah. But it was very difficult emotion. I think people kind of forget that we were literally 16-year-old kids.
Yeah, I was about to say, I said,
and yet, so basically what he is saying, and just to be clear, so it doesn't get twisted, is he's not saying that it should never ever be necessary. He does know like there are times where like maybe someone who's in the throes of addiction, maybe in an abusive relationship, have a child, that obviously the child will be better off, with someone else. So he is acknowledging like there are times that yes, absolutely, the baby should be somewhere else without, not with biological parents due to them going through it. But he's saying like in most circumstances, if the parents can parent, rather than them being talked out of parenting because, oh, well, like he said, they were not even told resources, he says, like they really weren't. They were given more like, you're too young, you can't do it, this is how much it costs, versus, well, you can get on food stamps, you can get WIC, you can get government housing if you guys decide to keep her. He says like they really weren't told all the things, all the ways they could have made it, but instead they were told the ways they couldn't make it. You know what I'm saying? So, and he just says he feels like if he had responsible adults in his life telling him this, and a lot of people says April was telling them, I definitely would not have believed anything April said. April couldn't give me advice to wipe my butt front to back to front, whatever it is, front to back, and I would have listened. I would have the opposite coming from April, just because, you know what I'm saying? But yes, at this point in the 2000s, you can absolutely educate yourself. So yeah, let's continue, you guys. So we're gonna skip to a clip where Tracy brings up that she had support. She was like, I had my mom, but I was a teenager. So even though I had a supportive mom and had family, my mom even still like encouraged me to place my child for adoption just because I was still a teenager. So basically saying like sometimes even if you have family there, resources there, like you could still be, they still want you to put up for adoption because you're just young. And actually that's what we just listened to. Sorry, you guys, I got my notes all out of whack. But Tyler says if they would have had one adult encourage them, then maybe they would have, they would have kept Carly and tried. One adult telling them the resources that they did have.
Even like me and Kate always say, even to this day, like if we just had one adult that we could trust, that we obviously could take their word and believe it, but one adult say, hey, you can still parent and also give the baby a good life. And it was like, I think at our age, we just knew, like, we parent, baby has a crappy life, horrible life. How horrible people are we to do that? Or the other one. And so it was like, if we just had one adult say, hey, you can do this, and people do this all the time, and there's resources, and I think we would be in a very different situation that we are in now, and maybe our life would look completely different. Who knows? Like you said, hindsight's 2020, but I do know for a fact that the decision to relinquish was based out of desperation. And I think one thing that kind of happens, I think when you're young, especially 16, 17 years old, like so many adults are telling you that you're so selfless and you're so strong and you're doing the best thing. And it's like, at that age, you have no choice but to believe them. And so like, all right, like my soul's telling me not to do this. My brain is saying, yes, it's a logical thing to do, And so I think for us, it's like, how do you fight such an organic, natural, our human species is to protect and love and care for your offspring. And so how do you fight that, like, millions of years of evolution to, like, not to do that? And I think people telling you all these things like, hey, this is the best thing. And then obviously going to the adoption agency really solidified it, because you're walking the doors, they already know what you're thinking. Yeah. So they kind of, I think one thing that's interesting is that me and Kate think about, where it's like, we will go to this adoption agency, and what they tell you is that how hard parenting is going to be. They make you break down how much the costs of diapers are in a year, how much, all these things really.
That would have scared me as I got pregnant at 17. If somebody would have sat down and been like, okay, formula is going to be this much, diapers is going to be this much, I would have been like, And
it's like, they kind of like.
Thankfully, I was told, hey, you could get on WIC. So I was told, like, don't worry about it.
In my opinion, right, this is just my opinion, but I think they disguise facts with they kind of like use the facts. Well, this is a fact, how many $1,000 per month for diapers, and can you do that right now? And it's like, well, the answer is no, we can't. And so it's like, in a way, it's like that's another layer of, like, adults in your life telling you this is the best thing, adoption agency saying, hey, you can't parent even if you wanted to.
I'll say it's emotional manipulation. And that's one reason, because I counseled at a crisis pregnancy place for years.
Oh, wow.
And when, so we went to some teaching thing, continuing education kind of stuff on counseling. And
so she was a counselor, the lady here, Tracy.
The one reason.
She still is, just in a different setting now.
The main reason why I quit after this, was we went to this continuing education thing that was on, have you heard of the curriculum, Decisions, Choices, and Options?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So, and here's the thing. I was sitting in this church auditorium, and they're talking about this curriculum, and they're showing videos of y'all. They're showing videos of how strong and how courageous and how wonderful this choice was. And I'm thinking to myself, but you're not interviewing them. You're showing their story. You're using their story. You're not using their words and their heart. You're using their story. And so I was even more intrigued by, okay, I get it. But then I asked the question, and this is why I was not okay with any of it anymore. Was we were not, of course, most Save a Life or crisis pregnancy places are steering people away from abortion. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, it's, now we got to push that adoption thing. We got to push the adoption thing. And then parenting is over here, like, you can't do this. Why would you need to do this? Or again, listing. And I went on their website the other day, and they're listing all the price tags of This is how much it is to raise a child within the first year or whatever it is. And I'm thinking, well-off people have a hard time. Stop. Yeah. Stop doing that.
Well, my thing is that they show you these, what really gets me is they show you these things, right? But they don't show you any of the resources that are out there either. They don't say that there's, WIC. They don't talk about, what I mean? They just literally scare you into thinking, hey, you cannot do this. And if you decide to parent, you're a selfish parent, like you're a bad parent.
Right.
So,
but then they do have programs for people who do parent their children. So they have these other educational programs that say, hey, if these people come in, we're going to teach them how to do all these things. Isn't that the same thing? But you're just trying to talk people into making them think that they can't parent their own children.
Okay, so That was all pretty interesting. I'm going to be honest. I thought the whole interview was pretty interesting. Everything that they talked about. We're going to continue. So where am I at? So we all know at this point they went through the adoption of their daughter Carly. They became advocates for adoption. They spoke publicly, encouraging young parents to consider it because at the time that was the only way. This is according to Tyler. He said, now looking back, they spoke publicly, they became advocates for adoption, but now looking back, he feels that was the only way for them to cope with the guilt and the grief that they carried. He said he felt like him and Kate both knew at the time. Like they both knew that that was like not 100% how they felt, but they were too scared to like tell each other. Tyler now admits that it felt like they were, kind of brainwashed and taught to minimize their pain by saying, well, she has a better life though. So despite the fact that they felt pain, it was like, well, you know what? She has a better life, so it's fine. We gave her a better life. So it's fine.
Like, nope, you sit down, shut up, Tyler. You sit down. Fast forward a little bit. So talk a little bit about the relinquishment in itself on your side. And like I said, I hope to talk to Kate one day, and because I don't want to put words in her mouth either. But tell me how that felt.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think in the hospital, me and Kate both kind of like it was like unspoken words, but we held her and we were looking at each other and we both knew, like, we had the same thought without saying the words of like, we could just leave right now. Like let's just get out of here and like screw the adoption agency, screw our parents. Like we just wanted to like literally let's go wrap the baby up in a blanket. We'll go run under a bridge somewhere and just that's it. And I think me and Kate talk about it. It took a while, post relinquishing to actually be able to like admit it to ourselves that we both had those thoughts. But it was, like I said, I mean, I can't imagine, it was devastating for me. So I always say, like, I know it was, times 1,000 for her. Because, especially learning about just the biological connection that you cannot sever, especially the fact that, Kate was a woman who birthed a girl, and it just, there's so many, like so many things that you can't sever biologically. And so, it's the fight or flight feeling that I think people don't, and what you see in the 16 pregnant episode is, a lot of tears, but, and it's tears of sadness because we know what's happening, but it's also, we look back at it now as adults and we're like, it was actually just tears of we were just crying for help. Like, please, like, I think people get it confused that birth parents, I don't care how much planning you have. I don't care how many times you hung out with the adoptive family. I don't care what it is. The day that the baby's born, it's whatever you had planned, whatever you had written on a piece of paper, it blows up in your face and you didn't even really expect it. So you can be prepared as much as you want, but the feeling to fight that organic, natural parental instinct is fighting against nature itself. And so I think people think, oh, well, you had plans and you talked to people, I know it's sad, but it's all good. It's like, no, you don't really know it's all good. You feel like you are completely alone. And like, we felt guilty for even thinking about parenting.
Right.
And that's kind of what I think people need to understand, that, when we say coercion, it's a very slow, it's not like right away. It's very slowly built up. Believing that, I even felt, and we look back at it now, and you're a mother, you get like, I felt guilty for wanting to even parent my own child. Like, what kind of environment, what kind of words are we hearing to even have that guilt feeling of wanting to parent? So
because people had told you the emotional manipulation. I mean, I was married 31 years to a narcissist, Tyler. So it's the building of, they know what they're doing. They're planting seeds all along, and that's why I call it predatory, because they're planting seeds all along.
As the person receiving it, like and it's so weird because
cognitive dissonance.
Instead of calling it out, you're like, ooh, it's such a weird, it's a very weird experience to even admit later on that you were coerced, or even admit later on that you were, fed certain stuff. It's difficult because how do you even begin to heal yourself with that kind of guilt?
So obviously, back then they showed so much. Like I've watched interviews from them back then, and it's like, do you regret it? No, not at all. But they always followed it with, she had such a great life, and we couldn't have gave her that life. She would have been raised in chaos, which all of that probably would have been true. I mean, Brandon and Teresa absolutely gave her a good life, as far as we know. As far as we know, it seems like she has a great life. From any pictures that I've seen, videos, she looks happy. So who's to say, she would have had an equally great life with them? Don't know. Kate was still in the midst of chaos with her mom, but I mean, Kate and Tyler moved out, 2 years later, maybe. So, I mean, maybe the first 2 years of her life would have been chaotic, but those are still important years, and they are still, not to say she couldn't be traumatized to some extent with certain things. Now I think Kate and Tyler would have did their best to protect her from April, Butch, whatever. So I don't think they would have let like anything dramatic or drastic happen, but just what was around in the environment, just April and Butch in the environment, Um, but if you go back and you watch those clips of them, they were just it seemed just wholehearted. But like he said they kind of had to convince themselves that what they did was okay because if they would have like I guess realized what they were really feeling deep down, they would have had too much guilt about it. Um, all right, so fast forward to today, Tyler's perspective is completely different. He no longer believes adoption should be promoted as an option to teens in crisis. In his words, adoption should be the absolute last resort. Instead, young parents should be given real resources, financial help, housing, mental health support. That's another thing is like these agencies, they will, they're hanging out, they're hanging around, and they're involved and they're checking in with you up until that baby is handed over. And then maybe in the couple of weeks following that, the 30 days following that, to get everything signed and sealed and confirmed. But as soon as it's final, most don't come back to make sure your mental health is good. They're not there to support you afterwards. I mean, Dawn has, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's because of the show or why she's been around, but that's very rare that someone will stick around. So he said if they would have had financial help, housing, mental health support, and encouragement, rather than being told parenting is too hard or that they weren't good enough, then maybe they would
Kind of
have
like
chosen a different route.
it's one of those things where parenting isn't the first thing that we try to figure out, because I think we can't pretend to be naive anymore. We can't ignore the studies that, obviously a baby, when it's safe to do so, is always better off with the biological family. And we don't talk about the fact that every adoptee has experienced maternal separation trauma, and that is it's a fact.
It's what happens.
It
It's
is.
just
And
biological.
I'm pretty sure in being a doula, like the fluid, the smell, it's such a vital thing for those that first, getting those brain neural pathways running good. So, and I think adoption agencies are being neglectful by leaving out that information, by saying, hey, this is what maternal separation trauma looks like. This is what this is the suicide rate versus normal population versus adoptees. It's just facts. And I feel like if people were more transparent about it, I think we'd have less adoptions. And I also believe that I think it's weird to me when people say, well, we want more adoptions. And
I will say I agree with that. I feel like if this was like taught in school about teen pregnancy and about the truth about adoption, and if it was just like completely transparent on like open adoption it's not legal in most states. So even if you agree, and no matter how many times you meet, and just have people on sharing their stories so people know the truth about adoption, that there's trauma no matter which way you slice it. There's trauma with adoption. um and even like this lady, she said like she loves her adopted parents, but it doesn't mean she still doesn't like wonder where she come from. It doesn't mean she still don't have trauma for some things. You can love your parents that adopted you and feel like they are your parents, and you are happy that you have them, and you don't like have regrets over the fact that you were adopted, but still have trauma on the other side of it too. She's like, just because you're happy with your parents and you wouldn't change the fact that they adopted you doesn't mean you still don't have like some trauma or even some questions about like, who am I really? Or, you know what I'm saying? And I've seen this even on Tyler's post where people will say, I'm adopted and I wouldn't change a thing. I'm adopted and I love my parents. They're my only parents. I don't, the other people, my sperm donor and egg donor, they're nothing to me. But what she was saying, Tracy, is that even if you feel that way, that you love your parents, your adopted parents, and you feel like they are there is still things that come from that, like trauma. You still like need to work out things because you're going to have, it could show up in your relationships, like feeling abandoned and things like that. You know what I'm saying? So she's like, just because you're super happy, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't come without the issues. So yeah, for years, Tyler and Caitlin promoted adoption publicly, and this is according to Tyler, not because it was healing, but because it was the only way to make sense of their pain. Tyler admits now that it was almost like they were brainwashed. They were manipulated into believing their grief wasn't valid. That their only response was to tell others, look how happy our child is. But behind the scenes, both were suffering, fighting against their natural parental instincts, and struggling with guilt.
You don't have to, say but. And I think it's interesting because, we spent 2 years after relinquishing, went around the country. We went around the whole universities. We spoke about this is adoption, blah, 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 all this stuff. And it's like, even in that state of mind, we were trying to make sense of the pain. And so I guess and this is pretty common, I found out that a lot of birth parents actually do a lot of advocacy work afterward. And I think it's really, I'm like, that's interesting because it's almost like your brain's trying to like heal and make sense of this pain. So what do? You advocate and talk about how great it is and this is beautiful. And
it's giving yourself permission to do it. You're giving yourself permission to be like, it was okay to do because you're talking it up. Same with me. I was talking up my marriage. For years, I was talking up my marriage saying, oh yes.
I think I already played this, but this is so true, Miss Bug. This is so true. Sorry, I was reading the comments, but I've already played this clip. Very true that there also comes issues from the father side. I mean, I raised my daughter. I have a daughter that I raised, but her dad was not really, and daddy issues are so real. I grew up with daddy issues. I mean, I didn't realize till I got older, and they started showing up in like my relationship with my husband. But yeah, they're very real. We're gonna skip that because I already played that, and I guess I got caught in my notes here. So yeah, Tyler obviously sees things very differently. He no longer believes adoption should be promoted as the first option or an easy solution for teen pregnancy. Instead, he wants adoption to be rare, used only when every other avenue of family preservation has been explored. His ultimate goal isn't to encourage more adoptions, but to push for support systems that actually allow mothers and fathers to parent if they want to.
I feel like if we don't support, if our first priority is not to support the mom in parenting, then we're already failing.
Absolutely.
We're not doing the right thing. And
Right.
so that's where I get to where it's like, I want to get to a point where adoption is not necessary. We don't need it because we as a human species take care of our people, and adoption wouldn't be necessary if that was the case, in my opinion. So now going back, because you didn't
Thank you,
even
Todd.
think once about placing the baby.
No. And the reason why is I think that I was, starting to understand like my own adoption and the abandonment issues and the separation and what that was. And I had not found my family yet or anything. And I didn't even look for or have a yearning for the family part until I was out on my own and having my own. Did I think about it some, but it didn't consume my life until after. And I want to be encouragement to y'all. That's going to happen. 100,000% she thinks of y'all. 100,000%. Will it?
Can I just say, I don't know, Tracy. I've watched the interview. This is my second time, obviously watching. I watched it one time incomplete, and these clips or whatever. She seems like a nice lady, but I don't know if it's fair to say like 100% like she will come to y'all because not all do. I do think Carly probably will. I think. I mean, all the stuff that happened the past few months, I don't know, that may have put a damper on her feelings towards them. But I always thought like, oh yeah, she'll come to them. They had a good relationship. She was always into the visits. Like she always seemed good at the visits and teen mom. Like there were times where we saw Nova like say like, Carly asked to come for a sleepover. And Carly said, when I get 18, I might just come stay the night at y'all's house. So it always seemed like she did have an interest in Caitlin and Tyler. Now, everything that happened the past few months, I don't know if that has changed where she stands with them. But Tracy is saying like, no, she's going to reach out to y'all. She's going to come around. Now she is saying, even if it's for just like medical records and to understand more of where she came from, but some don't. Some don't.
Overtake her sooner or later? Yeah, it will. First of all, she's a girl. And there's no denying.
Okay, she said 100% she thinks of y'all, but I do think she says she's going to come to them, right?
That. She'll start thinking health stuff. She'll start thinking, and she might already know some stuff because she knows y'all.
Mhm.
So, she might be thinking more about until I was out on my own.
Let me rewind it because I may have said that wrong. Sorry. Thank you for correcting me though.
And having my own. Did I think about it some, but it didn't consume my life until after. And I want to be encouragement to y'all. That's going to happen. 100,000%. She thinks of y'all. 100,000%. Will it overtake her sooner or later? Yeah, it will. First of all, she's a girl, and there's no denying that. She'll start thinking health stuff. She'll start thinking, and she might already know some stuff because she knows y'all.
Mhm.
So, she might be thinking more about, I want to know my birth records. I just recently at the end of July sent off my paperwork for the rest of my records. I've got some stories, but now I want them verified. And that's what she's going to want. She's going to want verification. She's going to have a yearning. She's going to have it's going to pull at her until she gets some resolve.
It's interesting that you say that, because that's one of the main reasons why I actually went and got an affidavit of parentage. So I wanted to make sure that I was on that original birth certificate. I didn't care, even though we knew we were placing and relinquishing, I didn't care. I was like, I want that paper. Because I feel like I just thought, for some reason in my head, I'm like, you know what? They're going to change the birth certificate anyway. But why not have the original one there?
That's what I can't wait to get. Is I'll get identifying information. I'll get, cause mine was, closed in 73, Catholic services, all those shady kind of things. And actually the information that I do have is that she, went home and told the kids that she had, cause I was the youngest of 6, that I wasn't coming home, that I had died. And now do I think that, I don't know if they told her that I had died, and that's the other dark secrets of adoption, is I have friends that are adopted, that their birth moms were told, were taken away and were told that they didn't survive. So, so there's that. It is
That is insanity. And I have read about that before. I have seen stories where people's commented on posts saying I was told my mom died. Come to find out years later, she was alive. And I'm like, that is insane. That is sickening for someone to adopt a child and then say, oh, well, your birth mother is dead. What? Oh my goodness. You don't have to tell them they're dead. That makes me feel like you just really don't want to ever have to worry about them reaching out to find their birth mom, to tell that they're dead. That's insanity. Now Tyler also speaks out about the industry itself, the way it profits from crises and markets directly to vulnerable young people. He says he is especially passionate about exposing how agencies minimize the trauma of separation for both birth parents and adoptees. For him, true advocacy now means being honest about the pain and making sure future parents know the full reality before ever making a permanent decision.
Flow through. I don't again want to talk bad about all of them, but the predatory behavior on birth parents, I think, is pretty big in the U.S.
Definitely very evident, especially when most adoption agencies, over 25% of their budget goes to marketing. And I just thought that was, when learning that, I was like, wow, so you're marketing to get them in the door.
Thank you,
and I thought it was interesting because if you use Google and type in pregnant teen scared or whatever you type in, you will get sponsored. I mean, it's very, they spend a lot of money on marketing. And I thought, wow, that's so strange to market towards crisis. I thought that was really a weird kind of I guess my whole thing with it is, how do you remain ethical when there is so much profit to be made and so much commodifying of children, and then also telling young kids that, hey, this is what you need to do. It just, the whole thing feels a little just icky. You know what I mean? I think that you probably sensed it when you were in there and you're like, listen, this is not really aligning with my morals. I feel icky about it. And I wonder how many people feel that way, but they're just so married to the idea, and so married to society's perception of adoption, how beautiful it is, and that it's almost scary for them to kind of just pause for a second and really think about the just the ethical crossroad you come to, because it's what do I do? And I feel like you can't be alone in that. Have you met anybody that's shared your kind of experience?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty prevalent. So, like you said, you want to help. We're empathetic people, and it's here's the systems. And, when you're counseling.
Okay, I was just looking up. I just looked up Bethany Christian Services 2024 annual report. Let's see. This year we served 53,766 children, families, and individuals, providing hope through all things. 21,334 refugee and immigrant children and families received trauma-informed care and pathways to long-term stability. I don't know what that means. Because I don't even think I don't think they I mean, maybe now they do like some sort of therapy or 25,825 children and families were served through adoption, foster care, and services to strengthen and empower families. 6,642 children and families were served in our final year of providing global support and programming. I don't know what that means. I don't get what they're saying. Let's see. All right, so operating revenue 2024 137 million. Service fees 5 million, almost 6 million. I'm really not trying to figure out how to read these. Operating expenses, adoption in 2024, 7 million, counseling 2 million, family preservation and strengthening 9 million, almost 10 million, foster care 21 million, global service social services 2 million. Management in general 16 million. Total operating expenses 150 million. I'm gonna look at that further to really break down kind of what each means, because I'm trying to figure out like how much they spent in marketing and how much they actually okay, we'll look at that another time. I'm gonna see if I can break that down. Let's see. So looking back, obviously, and this is not the complete interview. Obviously, I'm not going to play the complete interview, but it was very interesting to me. There's so much that is in there that's packed in there. I'm going to play this clip too, and I don't even have a title for it. I just put play clip.
Depiction of birth parents in the media is Lifetime movies of crazy sucking birth parents and the baby back, and so it's like we haven't got the best representation out there. And also, I feel if anything, the adoptees have totally got screwed because they're in a double whammy kind of thing of like, well, I have to be grateful, which means that there's no room for sadness,
Right.
And so I think
because we were saved from the bad, from the bad stuff. And we have to be grateful. And so I do catch myself when I'm speaking it wherever I'm speaking. I'll say, things like, I can not like the feeling of being adopted. I can not like that and still love my adopted mom. I love my adopted mom, but I can also yearn for a longing of knowing my birth mom too. It can all be the same. But I think people that lash out, specifically people that don't understand like what y'all's thinking are and, this big public thing is I think they're coming from trauma responses also of not having relationships with their own parents. And, they see what y'all are trying to do or trying to understand and they're like, just stop. I'm like, you don't get it.
Yeah, you're right. You don't get it. And it's because you are living in this kind of reality that society's pushed, and I understand why. And it's like I use, when we were younger, it used to kind of sting us a little bit when we'd hear certain things, but now I'm just like, oh, you just don't know. You don't get it. You're ignorant. It's not your fault really. But from here on out, it is your fault. So I'm telling you, here's the facts. Read this book. Talk to Adoptee. You know what I mean? I try to like lead them. I'm not trying to like preach to you. Just lead them kind of to their own discovery, because I think the more people talk about it and not just the glorified happy stories, I think it's important. The more we talk about it, the more people. So it's almost like we need a culture shift.
Yes.
Not only in policy and stuff with adoption, but like a culture shift. We need to really stop prioritizing the adoptive families and stop prioritizing the protection of this weird wrapped bow present that we've had in adoption, and learn that, and I get people all the time say, how are we like this? I'm like, well, if you compare it to other countries, very different. So different. America's the only one that has this kind of industry. And I
think there needs to be more of accountability on adoptive parents to like, why are you adopting? Like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you really, truly doing this? Because, growing up being adopted or, even coming into parenthood and the circles of parents that we were friends with, and people would say, yeah, we're done having kids, but we might adopt. And I'm like, why? Why is that on the tail end of everybody's family or even at the beginning of family? And I have family members that have adopted. Okay. We're very
tragedy.
And I am engaged to somebody that has two adopted children. I get it. I really do. I want, if people can provide and somebody needs to be provided for, great. But there needs to be some accountability on the front side of a family that's like, you know, oh yes, I want to save this child from wherever they are. That doesn't need to be the first answer.
Right.
It just doesn't, you know.
Well, I
So I
also feel that is also accountability
I
goes
agree
down
there
to the
too.
adoption agencies.
Mhm.
Why are you not?
I agree I agree to that too. Like, and I never thought about that before. You know, people that's like, and yeah, I never thought about that before until recently started, you know, where it's just like, oh, well, we'll have our own 2 or 3 and then we may adopt, you know. And I'm like, huh. What, but maybe, I mean, and the biggest possibility probably is they're like, you know what, there's so many children out there that need a good home. So we'll have 2 or 3 and then we'll adopt one, you know, to be there to help a kid. More than likely it's not a nefarious reason or it's not to satisfy anything of their own self. Really thinking about it, I doubt the majority of married couples that say, you know what, we want to have 2 of our own kids and then we're going to adopt. I doubt it's to give anything more fulfilling for them, but to be like, you know what, we want to have our own biological children, but we also want to help those kids out there that need a, you know, a family. So we'll have a couple of our own and then we'll adopt one to be our own. But also like I've read too, like, you know, where that stands and the trauma that that puts on kids, adoptees when they are adopted, but their parents have bio children, how that also plays a part into causing them trauma. So there's just so much trauma here. Hey, Ghost, this lady is Tracy. Her YouTube page is called Tracy Doula. And she was a teen mom. She's an adoptee and she's a counselor, I do believe she said. But she did an interview with Tyler. I thought it was very interesting. It was over an hour long. We watched a few clips. I showed you guys a few clips that I thought were pretty interesting. Um, yeah, at one point, Tyler says they can't ignore the studies that a baby is better off with their bio family most of the time, that every adopted child experiences separation trauma. So one of our kids spent 130 days in foster care waiting for a forever family. And they do talk about that too. They do talk about, you know, like maybe choosing the route of foster, you know, so. She just wants her own say in anything in her life. Anyone talks about her life, her adopted parents act like she's property and she should be grateful for her bio parents. But yeah, you guys go check it out. I made a post over on my Facebook page. If you guys want to go watch it and then run over to my Facebook page on my post and tell me what your thoughts are on it, I would appreciate that. I have to go ahead and head out, but you guys leave me your thoughts in the comment section below. Tonight, I will be live on TikTok. I think tonight is Chrisley or okay. We're gonna be live on TikTok. We'll either do Chrisley or Welcome to Plathville, or we may do both. I don't know. If both has aired, we may do both. So just make sure you're following me over on TikTok. And I have a doctor's appointment, and I'll probably be back around 8 or so. So as soon as I get back, I'll be posting to let you guys know that I'm gonna be going live. Okay. Episode 5, Chrisley, please. Okay, so we can do Chrisley tonight, and then Welcome to Plathville tomorrow. It might be too much to do them all tonight. But you guys, leave me your thoughts in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.